This is the Left of Center podcast with Rob Royce and Ben Knight.
Welcome back.
Yes.
To the Left Center podcast. I am Ben Knight.
I'm Rob Royce.
And it feels good to be back in here.
It really does. I actually had a little while here this week where I didn't think we were going to make it.
You know what? I agree with you 100%. Life is just it's too busy, man.
It's crazy busy. What have you been up to this week?
Honestly, this has been probably one of the least busy weeks I've had in a very, very long time.
So this was all on me.
So this is all on you. You are having a very, very busy week. We have a ton of stuff. I'm having
an insane week.
We have a ton of stuff going on at the church,
yep.
And it's just been poor Rob has kind of been saddled with the hey, you have to get everything done.
Well, because it's my own agenda. For one, I mean, I'm planning an event, a fundraiser event for my youth group that I lead in, and it's going to be awesome. Ben's involved. I've got a bunch of other people involved. I expect there's going to be somewhere between 150 to 200 people that are going to come. Just trying to do a nice job, and since I'm the one who came up with this thing for this particular week, it's, in all fairness, it's on me.
It's on you, sir.
It's on me.
But it's all right. You're going to do a great job. It's gonna all work out.
Well, we'll see. We're going to see how I've come up with this little fundraising agenda. I've got two boxes, one with a picture of me from like 6 years ago and another one with a picture of me like just 3 weeks ago. 6 years ago, I did not have long hair or a beard. And now I do have long hair and a beard, and so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity, because there's people who like, hey, that guy should get a short haircut, and there's other people who say, actually, we really like the way it looks. And so here I've got two boxes, and people can donate into either box, and the one that wins in terms of how much it's earned is going to be the way that I look at the end of the event. Ben's wife, who is a hair cutting professional, has graciously agreed
I like that you call her a hair-cutting professional.
I don't know. I call
hairstylist.
Hairstylist? Okay. I don't know what to call those sorts of things. And so, so I've retained her services regardless of which direction this goes. And so, by the end of the evening, this coming Sunday night, I might be a totally different looking dude.
And you know what? Maybe, even if she doesn't cut your hair, maybe we could just do do some highlights and...
we could, yeah, because I
pretty you up.
Yeah, because we're gonna make this like a big reveal, and until the moment when nobody's gonna know which box wins until they actually see me. We could spend half hour, 40 minutes behind the curtain doing whatever. But it's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It is keeping me pretty busy this week. This event. I wouldn't have it any other way, and I'm really, really excited. But it did throw a question mark over whether or not we were going to get a podcast recorded.
It's very true. There are some weeks where we are incredibly busy.
Yep.
And other weeks where
we're not.
We're not.
To an extent. Well, I mean, there are weeks where it's like we definitely have that day planned where we can make the podcast recording and it's going to work. And then there's weeks where like, hey Rob, when are we gonna do this? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know.
And the problem is usually when we record a podcast, what ends up happening is Rob and I are like, hey, you want to meet at 7 or hey, you want to meet at 10 or whatever the time is. But what ends up happening is we end up talking for like 2 hours before we even do the podcast and like 2 hours after.
Yeah, that's what happened last time.
So we it was not a joke when I posted on Twitter. Like I was like leaving Rob's house at 3:00 in the morning, and it was awesome and it was all good stuff.
We need one of those portable recorders. I've seen them, and we need to get one of those so that we can just leave things running all the time. Because if we just catch what we do in conversation, we're gonna have all kinds of podcast material that I think would actually be really, I don't know about fun to listen to, but it'd probably be actually really helpful for some of our listeners. If you guys are catching what we're up to here and you're digging it, then we should just have a recorder going anytime we're talking.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree with that.
And I don't want to get a big head about it either, because it's like, maybe we're not worth listening to at all.
I don't know. We've had enough downloads. I think that is not the case.
I hope that's not the case. I mean, I have a lot of fun with what we're doing, and like we've said before, all of this comes about just because Ben and I enjoy talking to one another, and we're inviting you into this environment too. And I'm gonna say let's get one of them portable recorders, and okay. If we do that, and you guys notice a particular dive in the quality of our recordings, you'll know that's probably what we did.
And they're like, you know what? Actually, it's not even the quality. The quality still sounds amazing.
Does it?
But now they're just like talking about the dumbest stuff now.
Are they driving?
They're literally riding in the car, and they're talking about like this REO Speedwagon song that just came on the radio or something. Or
time to bring this ship into the shore.
We probably
throw away the oars.
We literally
forever.
Anybody who's under the age of 30, we just lost them just now. I did want to ask you about. One thing I have done this week is my wife and I have gotten to this show Gotham.
Oh, you were talking about that show a couple months ago.
Pre Batman. The whole show is about Jim Gordon and when he first joins the Gotham police force and then becomes a detective, and then this is when like Bruce Wayne is a little kid. His parents just got shot, all that good stuff. But it's been a weird ride for me so far because like I'm a huge fan of the Batman. I'm sure you are as well.
Well, moderately.
Moderately.
He was my favorite superhero as a kid, but I didn't get into comics or superheroes that much. I just
like the idea of Batman. I like the idea that you got this guy who's a billionaire and he just goes out and he just decides, you know what? I'm going to go learn how to be, like, I'm going to go hang out with thieves and robbers and criminals.
Figure out how to do it.
And figure out what goes through their heads and why they do what they do and how they do what they do. And then he learns martial arts and he gets trained by the League of Shadows and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to go on and on about it because people are just going, move on. But, so anyway, this is a prequel to Batman. So Bruce Wayne is on the show. And so they've introduced a bunch of characters already. But one of the things that really bugs me so far is that I don't know if they're setting this show up for the long haul or not, because what they're doing is like they'll literally, they've got Edward Nygma already on the show, who is the guy that becomes the Riddler, Selena Kyle, who becomes Catwoman,
right?
The Penguin, I'm trying to remember them all in my head.
Bane.
No, but the newest episode. So spoilers if you guys haven't watched the new episode yet. They introduce Venom, which is what pumps Bane up and gets him all like and stuff. So, but my problem with this thing, because my wife really likes the two newer Batmans, is that, and she was totally on board to watch this show.
I'm not wearing hockey pants.
If you listen to the first episode, you'll understand what that means. But, so we started watching Gotham, and so far it's been pretty good. But like, they're throwing stuff in just for throwing it in, and that drives me crazy. Like, first of all, one of the characters is somebody that doesn't even exist in the Batman universe, which is a character named Fish Mooney, which is Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife, and there's no reason to have this character, and I cannot stand her. She's over the top, like she's real cartoony, and like my biggest problem is like she's very sexual. Like, it bothers me. Like they just throw in like this awkward sexuality every now and then just to like there's like one episode where she's like kissing a chick, and so it's just stupid. There's like no reason to have it in there. It's just for the shock and awe, I'm assuming. I don't appreciate it. See, it's little things like that, because it's like it really has me a little like I'm actually my heartbeat is starting to pick up because over this goofy show, because I'm just like, oh yes, we're gonna have like a TV show every week that I can watch, that I can enjoy, that's not full of garbage and stupid stuff. And then
you're smacked in the face with
and then you get smacked in the face with it, and it's just like, and actually we will talk about a little something like that in a little bit.
Okay.
But I was really pumped up about it because I was like, oh, I love the Batman movies. I love that this is gonna be really, really fun. And it's funny because my wife, who never says anything like this, like we watched the new episode yesterday because we just bought the season pass on Amazon, so we didn't have to like keep buying each episode and whatever. Yeah. And it was over, and I turned it off, and she goes, "Well, that was worthless." I was like, "Yeah, I know, right?" I'm like, it was just like, and she was watching it, and normally like she'll get into, she loves movies like Ocean's 11 and that kind of stuff. Big fan of Tim Allen because she loves Christmas movies. Yeah. We'll get into that in a podcast, I have no doubt.
Sure.
Because I know your wife really likes Christmas too, so I'm sure we'll...
Oh, man. I'm surprised we don't have Christmas decorations up already.
They're coming, sir. If my wife and your wife have their way, we'll probably have our Christmas tree up this weekend. But
nice.
Anyway, I don't want to spend half a podcast talking about the Gotham. I was just kind of bummed because like I was really excited about this show, and then it's not panning out. Like I said, just adding stuff just for the sake of doing it just makes no sense to me. Because like, look, I'm a married man. I understand, like, if you have characters that are married on the show, look, they're gonna probably make love. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do that. Fine. That's whatever. That's life. It's not real, but those are real situations. Those are gonna happen.
There's a reality they're depicting.
Yeah, then that's just fine. But like, just throwing in like, I'm gonna have two chicks making out, or I'm gonna,
Well, what are they trying to do with the character? Are they trying to show? I mean, what could it add to the character?
She's just a real. I mean, it does add something, but it doesn't add something that like.
It doesn't improve the show, does it?
It doesn't improve the show.
Is there some reason in the show?
It just makes her character all the more like kind of slimy, and like she'll basically do anything to get into power and all this stuff. And like I said, I mean, I could go into explanation on it, but again, I don't want to get. We're already 10 minutes into the podcast. I don't want to. I don't want this to become Gotham Cast. But Gotham Cast. But okay. No, I mean but as far as like doing stuff this week, that's been pretty much it.
You might have a far more restful week than me for once.
It's been, yeah.
Because like last was last week or was it the week before you had the crown and all that stuff?
Oh,
the dentist.
That was last week.
Bumping into your pickup.
I'm all right this week. I think
good.
I think we're all good this week for sure.
All right.
Well, I did want to touch on a little something.
Sure.
If I could.
Let's do it.
Should we?
Well, I don't even know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the headlines.
The headlines.
And now for the news with Ben and Rob.
So we're going to keep the headlines pretty brief this week. We're running a little bit of a time constraint tonight, but that's fine. But we're going to...
Well, we have a tendency to be... I mean, I don't know what it is about headlines that get... We're pretty talkative anyway, but there's something about these headlines.
Something about the headlines. We just start jabbering. Now...
It's like, just shut up, Ben!
I'm like, I'm sorry. Well, last week I was really interested with the cow. The cow story.
The cow was awesome.
I loved the cow. But this week, not a cow.
No.
I want to talk about Shai Labuff.
How did you pronounce Shai
Labuff?
Shai Labuff.
Of course, I'm sure most people listening know who Shai Labuff is. Probably back in the day, like he was in the movie Holes. He was on.
Is that where we're gonna start? Holes?
I think was he on Malcolm in the? No, that was the other kid, Frankie something. Anywho, but he was in like Transformers.
Definitely in Transformers.
He's been in tons of other stuff, but here lately. He's been in the news because he's been plagiarizing stuff. He's been whacked out on drugs, and alcohol, just basically turning in kind of a nut bar. I mean, just.
Well, I wonder how we see that a lot in these child actors, and he was, maybe he wasn't strictly a child actor, like got his start when he was 3 or 4, like Drew Barrymore or something like that.
And actually, I don't even know. I mean, he did start young.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Definitely before he's a mature person. He was started as a teenager. At least he was a teenager. And I don't know. It seems like that's the common tale. They all kind of go that way.
And he's just, and it kind of just came out of nowhere because, he was, he started out doing just the normal, tween to, teen movies. And then, slowly started to build up. And he was in that, like a cell phone movie or something. It was like a dramatic role.
Eagle Eye or something.
Eagle Eye, yeah.
I did see that.
Which actually, that was all right. I didn't mind it. It was all right. And then, of course, oh boy. It's not his fault. You have to just completely, you almost have to go brain dead to watch Transformers.
Yeah, you gotta unplug.
Because, first of all, Michael Bay, just...
There probably isn't a better special effects
No,
director.
not at all. In fact, I will say this. I will stand up for Michael Bay right now and say, look, if you're looking for action and well done stuff, blowing up, big scale, like if you went to go see it in 3D or IMAX, it's going to blow your mind.
Yep.
You can't get any better than Michael Bay.
But you got to unplug your brain.
But you got to unplug your brain. If you're looking for, something to stimulate your mind and stuff, go watch a Gus Van Sant movie or, go watch, something like, if you want something to stimulate your mind, you can go watch like a Gus Van Sant movie or, somebody who does a little more, let's blow stuff up, let's actually tell a story kind of stuff. But
like Michael Bay maybe should be paired from time to time with I don't know, why don't these directors, why don't they ever, like, partner up?
Well, I mean, and Michael Bay's worked with, a lot of, I won't say great writers, a lot of good writers, a lot of decent writers. But I mean, something like Transformers, those movies, I mean, just the plot holes. I mean, you could drive like 19 cement trucks through the plot holes in those movies, which I guess can be said for a lot of movies too. But the thing with Michael Bay is, again, you have to unplug and turn your brain off and just go, look, I just want to watch a bunch of robots beating the crap out of each other. That's what I want to watch.
Because it just seems like Michael Bay movies, and I don't know how much of this is Michael Bay's fault, so I'm not trying to bash anybody in particular. I'm just talking about my own impression of the movie. It's like, that was just stupid. Like, when I was a teenager, like in my late teens, that's when The Rock came out with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery.
I love The Rock.
Well, I did until I watched it recently and was like,
really?
Yeah. I went back and watched it and it was like, wait a second, I thought this was cool. You go back and watch it and see if you think it's cool again.
I mean, there are well, that's actually true.
Well, I'm not going to get into it because here, like we said, we're not going to babble on and on about the headlines, and here we go. But try The Rock again and see if you can at least spot why I might think it's. I
should go back and
now
watch
instead
it.
of as a 19-year-old watching, I'm watching it as a 34-year-old, and something about it is stupid. And let's see what you think.
Well, we say all that to
Shia
to get back to Shai Labuff. Apparently, Shia Labuff has become a Christian.
Like for real?
Like for real.
Okay.
I will read this to you. This is actually coming from theblaze.com.
Okay.
And
like that would be Glenn Beck's thing.
I will skip right down to basically, he said working on this new movie with Brad Pitt called Fury. I'll just read a quote for him here, and there's a part I'm not going to read. It says, "I found God doing Fury. I became a Christian man, and not in a
BS way.
BS way, in a very real way." He said, "I could have just said the prayers that were on the page, but it was a real thing that really saved me, and you can't identify unless you're really going through it." Now, this is one of those things where, and again, as I'm reading this quote, and actually he does use a couple explicatives as he's saying this. Now, I don't think that you can't be a Christian and use bad language. I don't think that at all. But especially somebody who's, if this is legit,
yeah.
I mean, first of all, God loves you right where you are. Like, he's not going to save you, when you've, completely cleaned up your act and you're, God
He's not waiting for you to get your ducks in a row.
No, not at all. He's going to help you get your ducks in a row. So that's not important. So, I mean, he is a little rough around the edges, but almost any actor that I've seen that comes out as a Christian.
Yeah.
A perfect example would be Stephen Baldwin. When Stephen Baldwin came out and he's like, "Hey, I'm a Christian." Like, there was a couple times I saw him and like, he was using kind of salty language and, maybe doing a couple things that weren't like, whatever. But I was thinking about it. And I'm like, when I got saved or other people that I know that got saved, I mean, were they perfect?
Well,
no,
of course not.
Absolutely not.
Still not.
No, exactly. And the thing is, the only reason that we pick on people that are in Hollywood or something, I mean, or a Christian who's really in the limelight, and basically what you're doing is you're just taking who we are, like even you and I, and you're just putting him under a microscope. Under a microscope.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you and I, we can sit here in the studio and we can talk about stuff.
This is the most public exposure we get.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like, TMZ's going to bust in here and be like, "So, hey, we saw you guys did this, hey, you, like, somebody cut you off and I heard you say, this word or whatever."
Right,
no,
right.
It doesn't happen. So, I mean, if this is legit, I mean, thank you, Jesus. Like, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it is legit. He did talk about the fact that, Brad Pitt actually did grow up in a Christian home, but he kind of rejected his faith.
Right.
And actually he's kind of into more
Some sort
of like
pseudo-spiritual thing.
Yeah. And so,
like almost everybody in Hollywood.
Yeah. And then like, whereas, David Ayers, the guy who wrote and directed the new movie Fury, is actually a Christian.
Really?
So he said he interacted with both of them. And I don't know if he's just kind of got to that point where, like I said, I mean, Shia LaBeouf's, he's been in just kind of a weird, whacked out state of mind for the last few years.
What is this that he means, though? But these two diametrically opposed positions, he's talking about Brad Pitt and David Ayers, both lead to the same spot. And I really looked up to both men.
I think the thing is, I think what he's trying to say, I think, again, I can't read Shia LaBeouf's mind, but I'm guessing, like, I think Brad Pitt believes in the idea of, like, there is, which I think a lot of people do. They don't necessarily believe in God. They believe in, like, but they know there's something. And that's where Brad Pitt is at, which I don't.
But even the demons believe that.
Well,
in the
exactly.
Book of James.
And that's the thing. And so I'm not going to agree with Brad Pitt's assessment.
Well, if Shia LaBeouf is a new Christian, it would, I can understand that he's not really going to discern. He doesn't have the discernment to see. I don't want to say a lot about it because I don't know what his experience here is. It does throw a lot of. It's when I hear news like this, it's like part of me just wants to say, "Oh, we'll see."
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, who knows? In a week, he could be like, "Yeah, God doesn't exist. I think this is all, bull crap, blah blah." And I hope that's not it. I hope. I mean, he, like I said, he's been in a pretty messed up place for quite a while now. So I hope that maybe he just hit his rock bottom, and he's really looking for answers, and he's really looking for, he hit that wall where he's like, you know what, there is something out there. There has to be a reason why, we're alive, why we're going through this. And so he talks to Brad Pitt and is like, yeah, I believe in something, and then he starts talking to David Ayers, and it's like, yeah, dude, of course there's a God. Yeah. And we don't know what the conversations were behind closed doors or just out in the open or whatever, but I mean, I'm hoping this is legit. I mean, that would be phenomenal. I mean, another Christian in Hollywood sure isn't going to hurt anything.
No, it probably means he won't be in Hollywood for long. Based on where we've seen other Christians seem to disappear from time to time. Now, I do want to say just one thing because we were talking about swearing and things like that. Whether, and this is a conversation Ben and I have had a lot. And whether curse words should be used by Christians, and the Bible gives us a really clear cut answer as to the way that we should use our mouth. Now, and I don't mean to be preachy here. I just want to bring this up because it came up with, because here in this interview we just looked at, he actually was describing, Shia LaBeouf was describing becoming a Christian. He's using some pretty filthy language in the middle of it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up a biblical precedent. Like, what does the Bible say how we should use our mouth as Christians? There's a verse here. It comes from Ephesians 5 verse 4, and I'll touch on what we're supposed to be doing with our mouth here in a second. It's listed in this verse. Here's what the verse says: "Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving." So the call to us as Christians is to use our mouth in giving thanks to God. Hebrews 13:15 says, "Let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that confess his name." Let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. So the thing that God finds pleasing about our speech is the speech that thanks him in a way that comes from our hearts. So as opposed to that, when's the last time you ever cursed or used a swear word in any way that was meant to be thankful to God? When's the last time you told a crude joke, whether it involved bodily functions or sexuality, that actually was meant to give thanks to God? When's the last time that happened?
Probably not very often.
Probably not very often. Right. And like I said, I don't want to get preachy about it, but since this came up, and this is one of these conversations that in Christian circles we go round and round on. Now, at the same time, I think you can go the other way and say, well, I'm a Christian, therefore I do not swear. It's like, well, if we really hunt down the reason for it, we might find when people say that what they're really, the real subliminal thing they're communicating is, I have become so much better now that I'm a Christian.
And that really bugs me, because I mean, what I will say about this is, too, and I'll just kind of play a slight bit of devil's advocate in that I know lots of Christians who do. I mean, their language can be at times a little salty. Yeah. Now, I know that these men and women they love the Lord. I don't doubt at all that they're Christians, but they just don't have that conviction. Like, there's
right.
not.
Well, and I think when it comes down to it, we see a lot of things in Scripture that would tell us that we even go back into the first chapter of Isaiah, and he goes into this long description of sacrifices and festivals and tabernacle style worship. And God tells the people through Isaiah, he says, enough of your vain offerings. Okay, so let's say I abstain from swearing, but the reason that I abstain for swearing is so that I can chalk it up. In that sense, I think God would say to us, well, you might as well just go on swearing then, because
that's the thing.
You haven't added an ounce of righteousness to you by stopping.
No, in fact, if anything, you just added a little bit of vanity to yourself, if anything.
Exactly. And so there's the vanity of it. And so if we're looking for a reason, okay, why shouldn't a Christian swear? Well, it's pretty cut and dry right here. It's because your talk with your mouth, both here in Ephesians 5:4 and Hebrews 13:15, and there's also another one in, I think it's at the end of Psalm 50, which is a spooky and chilling chapter to read. Psalm 50, it's about judgment against us. But at the end, it says something about what God is pleased with. This is Psalm 50. It ends with, what God is pleased with is a mouth that is thankful. So we have to contrast it with something that God is actually pleased by. Why not swear? Why is God displeased with swearing? It's because it's not a way in which we express thankfulness to God. But that also goes to show how much more of our talk is not thankful to God.
No, that's exactly right. And I don't think there's a difference between, let's say you stubbed your toe and you said, "Oh, poop," but you didn't say poop.
Sure.
I don't think there's a difference necessarily between saying "oh, poop" and the other word, as far as God's concerned, because you're still saying something that isn't. I mean, I don't want to get into the semantics of this word is worse than this word, or this word is. I mean,
because we can also say, "Did you see how the neighbor lady dragged her garbage can to the curb?" Well, we're not.
That's still displeasing to God what you're saying,
right?
I mean, it's not good. In fact, there was a time, maybe I should go back to it, where I would stub my toe and I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Jesus," or "Praise the Lord," because to keep myself from, because I'm just like everybody else. On occasion, a word will slip out of my mouth that I don't want to say. I mean, I don't want to pretend like I'm a holier than thou person as we're talking about this, because again, and there are probably things that Rob and I say on a daily basis that aren't even, they're not swear words, but just something that's, again, I mean, you could say almost anything. If it's not pleasing to God, then it's displeasing to God.
Well, and the indictment from Scripture comes down this way. James 3, verse 3, starting in verse 3 says, "If we put bits in the mouth of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at ships. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they're guided by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants to go. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire, and the tongue is a fire and a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of our life, and set on fire by hell." And so this is a pretty strong indictment coming from Scripture, and I would challenge any of us to think, you who by the use of your mouth is free from this indictment. It is good to control our speech, and the Bible also says in places, take captive every thought. So to try to sanctify everything that we say and everything that we think. We're not going to be perfect all the time, but the reason is because of on our own, if we were to just let ourselves say whatever the heck we want to say, we are going to defile ourselves and everybody else. We almost can't escape it.
That's exactly right. I mean, and we're definitely going off the reservation with the Shai Laboo thing, but I hope this is legit. I really do.
I really do too.
I mean, doesn't hurt that another person's world is saved. I'm totally down with that. That's the A of it. The B is
he happens to be a celebrity.
Which is going to be, for him, that's going to be a double-edged sword, because, he's going to get just drugged through the mud now, because, Hollywood does not big on God, unless it makes them money.
Right. Well, and we see where that goes. There's all kinds of movies coming out these days they're Bible movies made by atheists.
Please, let's definitely not go
there. We're not
going
to go there right now.
Because if we do, I could easily do 7 hours on why Noah is a piece of junk.
My wife I'd be back.
Exactly. So we're not going to get into that. But again, you know what? Shai Laboof, if you're saved, awesome, sir.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Well, I don't know why he would do an interview like that if he wasn't.
Here's what I'll say. Again, we'll play devil's advocate here. He's done a lot of goofy stuff recently, as far as like I said, he did some plagiarism.
Mm-hmm.
He literally said a quote that somebody else quoted. I'm not going to get into because I don't remember all of it, but he's basically been doing all this stuff just for attention. So it is possible this could be a publicity stunt. I hope it's not, but it just, and this is, I didn't want to do the thing where, and I think as a whole, Christians are guilty of this. Mm-hmm. Let's say, I want to get into this real quick.
Okay.
Let's say, U2 is a good example.
Yeah.
There's that thing where people are like, is U2 a Christian band or not?
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. I would say no, but people get, they're like, oh, they just had a song and they mentioned Jesus. They're obviously Christian.
Right.
Or like, I just watched this movie where, the actor, like, who's a good example? Give me a famous actor. Anybody?
Harrison Ford.
I just saw Harrison Ford in this Christian movie, and he played a pastor. He's obviously gotten saved.
Right.
No, he's an actor doing a job. U2 is a band that writes songs. Now, Bono is
he's Catholic.
He's Catholic, like, and he is he has said that he is a Christian. Okay, I'm not going to argue with the guy. I don't know him personally, so. But I mean, we get way too. It seems like the Christian community is so happy when there's a celebrity or, somebody they're like, oh, we claimed another one. Now we can use him or her as, like the springboard into like, see, Christians are cool. And that stuff just drives me nuts. 'Cause it's just like,
no,
why should we be more excited about, a Hollywood, and that's again, I'm not saying this news story because I'm like, oh, it's Shai Labuff and I'm so excited.
It is interesting and how, but I gotta identify with that. I was given a New Testament one time as part of an event that I attended, and it was a New Testament that was printed specifically for this event. And what they had done was they had, of course, the pages of the New Testament, they're all in this because they're giveaways, and they're giving away like 100,000 of these per event. Because it's a huge event, and it's a cheap paper. I mean, it's like newspaper paper. It's about as cheap and cheap print job as it can get. But about every 20 pages, 30 pages or so, there is this awesome, glossy full color spread on each side of a professional athlete who has a Christian testimony. At first I thought, this is kind of cool. And I actually started to grind on me a little bit after a while because, just even the way, and maybe nobody meant anything by this. And I'm sure, and I'm not trying to say anybody did anything wrong necessarily, but here's what ended up bothering me about this, is that as I paged through this New Testament, the only things that I really went to were the testimonials of these professional athletes. And because, these are, they were good articles. They were good little articles on these guys. Maybe I would have rather, I'm not regretting that these articles existed or that I had a copy of them, but they're in the pages of this New Testament. And guess what I did read? I read these articles. Guess what I didn't read? I didn't read the pages of the New Testament. And that ended up bothering me quite a bit. That, how much more importance have we placed on the words of these professional athletes or these celebrities who've come to Christ and their testimony, but then the actual pages of the Bible. I mean, there's an old song, called How Firm a Foundation. And by the way, we're singing it this Sunday in church. And the song starts out, it says, what more could he say than to you he hath said to, you who for refuge to Jesus have fled. And so the point of that song, in just that one line, is that we don't need anything other than Scripture to testify to the reality of Christ, to the reality of God and His glory in the face of Jesus Christ. We don't need celebrity examples.
No, and I think I have a friend who I think one of these days we're going to have him on the podcast, who's in a band.
Nice.
And he, told me, I actually did an old interview with him on a podcast I used to do before I met Mr. Rob, and we started doing this phenomenal podcast.
Nice.
Yay! Yeah. But he was telling me, he would go to shows and these festivals, and it just made him sick to his literally sick to his stomach because he would see, all these different booths and things selling Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like not truly being ministry based, but just like, how do we make money with Jesus. Like, they would literally have these, and you remember those goofy t-shirts, like, his pain, your gain shirts and stuff like that. Like those were
Lord's Gym, bench press,
that stuff. Now, I never got into that because I just thought it was cheesy at the time.
And there was the bracelets, WWJD.
The WWJD bracelets. But he said, now they have like these shirts where like, they're metal shirts, metal.
Yeah.
Where, Jesus' like mangled body is like on the front of this shirt. And he's just like, you know what? He goes, look, I get it. Like I have a pretty good understanding of what happened.
Yeah.
You don't need to slap it on a t-shirt and put $20 on it. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
it's just like, it has nothing to do. They're not trying to minister. They're not saying like, look at this shirt. This is what, our Savior went through so that you could live.
Right.
You're not going to die. You're going to live. You have the possibility of living someday. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's like, how can we make money with Jesus? And that that
you can, in a way, you can identify with this horror story instead of Hollywood's horror story, or you can identify with this kind of intrigue rather than the world's kind of intrigue.
But it's just like, to me, it was less of like an example like that than it was just
right.
Like, hey, how do we get money from Christians? Now, look, I'm not an idiot. I mean, I realize that whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, you need to make money. Like, so if you're gonna, start a business and you're a Christian and your business is, very solely based in Jesus, that's fine. I get it. But don't exploit.
Well, if you want to make money in niche apparel, you can put a brand name of a famous motorcycle on a t-shirt and go to Sturgis, South Dakota, and probably make in that 1 week all the money you need for the year.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and I'm not saying don't do like, I mean, I actually used to own a t-shirt when I was younger, by the band Bride, and it was a picture of Jesus in an electric chair. And what it was supposed to signify was that it was a modern day crucifixion. And so I was like, I just thought it was I'm like, oh, this is a cool shirt. And I'm like, and I got it instantly. I'm like, oh, it's a modern day crucifixion. They're like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember because I wore it to school once. Actually, after this, I wore it to school several times out of defiance because they took one look at it, one of my teachers, and then asked the principal to talk to me. And they're like, yeah, you have to go home and change it. I'm not going home and changing. And they're like, yeah, this is blasphemous what you're wearing. I said, no, it's not. This is the polar opposite. I'm like, this is Jesus being crucified in a modern day way.
Yep.
So this is a Christian band. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. You need to go home and change. And I didn't. So they sent me home. But like, to me, like that wasn't, maybe that is the exact same thing. Maybe that shirt was doing the exact same thing. I don't know. I'm looking at it now, like, and maybe it's, there's a lot of different variables, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and here, in the middle of all this conversation, I happen to be wearing the shirt that our youth group printed up that is a shirt of testimony, so to speak, that kind of shirt that we're talking about. Air quote. It's a shirt of testimony. And so, yeah, here I am wearing a shirt like this, but I don't know. We put a lot of thought into the meaning behind this shirt, and it might be more than anything, this one, I'd like to think that we wanted to generate some questions about it.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I think, with certain things, I mean, people are going to look at, I mean, perfect example, that shirt I was wearing to school. I mean, that obviously invoked a reaction.
Yeah.
Which is what I think Bride was going for. But I mean, it was real. I mean, if people knew, again, it's a modern day crucifixion. That's true. Obviously today people are not going to nail people to a cross in this day and age.
They do though.
Not here though.
Oh, in America.
Not in America. They wouldn't do that.
They're doing that over in the Middle East.
Yeah, let's not get into that because that'd be we'd be here for like 7 hours too.
Speaking of being here for 7 hours, we only have 20 more minutes.
That's true. So we better move on. But, again, this won't be like this every podcast, but we just happen to we're under some.
If we didn't do this right now with the time that we've got, we're not getting one out this week.
Exactly.
So it's like, you guys want to listen to us for an hour, or do you not want to listen to us at all? don't answer that.
Don't answer that. They're like no.
Never
actually,
mind.
we don't want to listen to this at all.
Never mind.
Well, hey, why don't we just take this opportunity right now and let's just go ahead and open up the mailbag.
Oh, the mailbag.
All the emails that you write, let's open up the mailbag and look inside.
All right, so this week, and we actually did have a few different mailbag entries, and we're going to keep it a little short this week because we're kind of running out of time. But we did get a message from Kyle on Twitter, and he would like to know and actually, I'll just direct this to you, Rob, and I'll just kind of chime in where I feel like I need to.
Well, sure. Before we reread this, well, I gotta say I like what you did here because here Ben and I, we usually kind of decide where we're going to go with the podcast. We don't always, we say a whole bunch of crap that we don't ever mean to, we don't plan it out. This is a totally unscripted, but we do kind of, put a note in front of ourselves like, okay, where are we going to end up? And Ben, this is brilliant. I thought maybe this should have been obvious to anybody, but he put out on Twitter, just tonight before we were going to record the podcast that, hey, here's what we're going to be talking about. And if anybody wants to chime in, this is genius.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think from now on, we're just going to do that. Like, we'll make sure the day of, or even a couple days before, if we already know what we're going to be talking about for, this, that, or the other thing, we'll let everybody know. So that way, if you got questions or comments or, just whatever, you can throw them up on Twitter or send them to mailbag@leftofcenterpodcast.com. You can go to our Facebook, post something, whatever.
What it has done is it's given us an insane amount of continuity.
Yes, and I like the idea that, the thing is, you and I can just sit here and talk all day long, but we do. Holy cow, do we? But, perfect example is Kyle. Kyle wrote in and he had a question. His question was, hey guys, I would like to hear your opinion on the difference between watching murder on TV and, sex scenes. Is there, is there a difference as far as those are concerned?
Well, I'm going to toss this one. I'm going to toss this one out to you guys to actually check out the Ask Pastor John podcast, and you can find that probably as easily as you found ours. I use the iPhone app, by the way. There's also an Android app, but anyway, this happens to be, in fact, even this one of the podcasts that Ask Pastor John released, even just a couple days before we're recording this one, was about lust and how we can get a leg up in a sense on lust in terms of defeating this horrible thing in our life. John Piper has a lot of really great things to say about sex scenes in movies versus violence. And so I want to bring up a point that he made, and I'll, spoiler alert here. Here's what John Piper has to say. But I'm just going to say this by way of agreeing with him, and I'm not going to try to answer this on my own accord because I absolutely agree with John Piper on now. Here's what he says. He says it doesn't bother him that much when he sees violence on TV because it's not real. It's all, as well as they can do it, as realistic as they can make it look, it's all special effects. The guy who just got slaughtered, they wipe all, he gets to go hit the shower room, he cleans off, he goes home to his wife and kids or whatever it is he does. It wasn't real.
Well, yeah, they're doing make pretend for a living.
It's pretend. And any one of us, no matter how horrified we might be, those of us who are maybe more sensitive to it, horrified nonetheless by how realistic it is, we all get it. It's still just fake. Even filthy language like we were talking about before, it's like, all right, this is somebody's version of creativity, and the words that they're using or the harshness or whatever, this is all it's still made up, and words aren't severe in that way anyway. I don't know if have you ever seen one of those videos? Some people try to sneak them through on YouTube and things like that of like real life suicides or things like. Have you ever seen those? Well, here's what I'm talking about. Like there's some videos that I've happened to catch on the internet and things like that, and it actually is of people really being killed or actually committing suicide. Now, here's the thing about real violence when they do catch it on, or even on those news stories like when Rodney King was getting beat half to death. Yeah. I think there's something about real violence when you see it. It's a lot less dramatic. Like they don't do all the, I don't know what to call it. It's non-dramatized. It's like it doesn't have, it's not in slow motion.
There's not music in the background.
There's not music in the background. There's not, close-up shots of other people's reaction to it. But when you're actually seeing it happen for real, I don't know. To me, there's just like this sickening feeling welling up in my stomach about it. Like, wow. And there's a couple particular videos. I'm not going to talk about them, but there's a couple particular videos that I remember watching. It's just like, wow, it really put a pit in my stomach.
I am actually amazed. And Rob and I have talked about this before. First of all, I'm amazed at the amount of stuff that Twitter allows to be on there. But
Yeah.
I remember there was a story. I don't even know if you remember this. It was like the soldiers who threw like a puppy off a cliff or something like that. Do you remember that? That was like a huge deal.
Huh.
But there was a video of it. I'm like, well, surely they're not going to show that.
Right.
And they do.
They did, huh?
And it was unbelievable. And like, I'd actually heard from other people that were like, you can literally watch an execution on YouTube. And I'm like, no, you can't.
I think that's the one I'm referring to.
And you can. I mean, there's lots of them. And I've never watched one because from everybody I've talked to, it's like once you've seen it, you can't
Right, you don't unsee it. So that's kind of my point, is that you get this pit in your stomach, you get this sick feeling, and there's something very different about movie violence than that. When you actually see it happen for real, there is something really disturbing about it. And I don't know about any of you guys. I want to keep that innocence in a sense, that when I see it, I want to be shocked, but I don't want to be naive. This stuff really happens in the world. That's different. I don't want to be naive, but I do want to keep that sense of whoa. What I don't want to see that. Keep it away from me.
Well, yeah.
Now, I'm going somewhere with this. So here's the reason. This is what John Piper says. Okay, the violence is staged and it's fake. The guy goes home. Nothing's wrong with him. The language, okay, that's kind of fake too, and language is a whole nother ballgame. But the sex scenes, here's the thing. When there is a naked lady in the show, she's actually really naked.
She's really naked.
There's a real naked person there. And she's really naked, and I'm really watching. And so, like I was saying, that shock value, that you get when you see real violence. I mean, let's just say you saw somebody get offed in the street. Somebody's just,
well, and that's, to me, that's not like, and this is going to sound weird, but it's not poetry in motion. Like, there's not like, when you watch a movie, again, there's slow-mo, there's music, there's like, and it's almost like a weird thing. And this is going to sound weird. I'll ask your opinion on this.
Okay.
So, like, let's say we're watching The Princess Bride, and it gets to that scene where Inigo Montoya kills the six-fingered man.
Right.
Now, there's a part of you, because it's a movie, it's fake, but there's a part of you that's like happy for this guy.
Yeah.
You're like, yes, he killed the guy that killed his father. Like, that's a horrible way of looking at it.
Right.
But it is kind of true. I mean, you're happy that like in this instance, in that time period or whatever, like real justice has been delivered.
Well,
like this guy
you're
was
identifying with a real motive on his part, and justice is something that we actually really do want. But they're one of the more violent PG-13, or was it rated R? It might have been rated R. Troy, was it PG-13 or R?
I think that was R.
Was it R? Okay, well, I was gonna say, okay, so it's not a PG-13. But anyway, there's an interaction between Prince Paris and Prince Hector, where Hector says that, something like, you think that dying is glorious. He says there's nothing glorious about it. And he kind of brings home the realism of it. And so that's kind of my point, is that this glamorized violence on TV and in movies, if you were to actually see violence like that happen in real life, and this Princess Bride, Death of the Six-Fingered Man, that was nothing close to realistic.
Not
if
at all.
If that guy died from those wounds, it probably would have taken hours or days and days, and
there would have been a lot more blood. There would have been a lot. I mean, I've heard people that have been around people that have gotten shot and things like that, and it's not what you think. It's not like a couple bullets go in and a little bit of blood drips. No, I mean, like, in certain cases, big enough blood, I mean, it's coming out like crazy, and like it's not what it looks like on TV.
No, and so some of the glamorization, sometimes it overdoes it, sometimes it way underdoes it. But these videos, like you were talking about, I have seen those execution videos on YouTube, and a lot of times it's like when somebody gets killed, and you were watching it happen, you get this sinking feeling like, that's it, that was it, that he's not alive anymore, and holy cow, is it hollow. Okay, so like I said, I want to keep that kind of innocence. I want to keep that kind of shock when I see something like that. But here we've got movies. Now it's even, cable. Everybody's got cable or satellite TV, and it's not that difficult. Well, not to mention internet access. It's really not that difficult to access a movie or a TV show that puts nudity in front of you. Now, the point that John Piper is making is that where the violence is not real, the nudity and the sexuality is very real. And so Kyle here, he asks, what's the difference between watching murder on TV and a sex scene? It's like, well, one isn't real and one is. Now, okay, at least I hope they're only simulating the sex scene. Ray Comfort, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ray Comfort. He does this man on the street kind of interview with people and spreads the gospel that way. And Ray Comfort puts it this way. He says, let's say you went up to a window and you stared into this window at a man and a woman making love. They're not dressed. They're in this intimate, thing. They're in their privacy of their own home and things like that. And you're standing at the window watching them. What are you doing there? You're breaking the law, for one thing. And you're doing something very, very wrong by doing that. He says, what's the difference whether that window is a pane of glass into an actual room or a TV screen or a movie screen into a film set? What's the difference? What's going on in your heart? Either way, the motive to watch it through a window or watch it through a TV screen is the same. And so, Kyle, if you're wondering what the difference is, just contemplate that for one. I'm going to go back to Ephesians chapter 5 here, if you don't mind. It might take me a moment. Like even the Inigo Montoya thing in Princess Bride, in that scene, they're depicting whether it's right to take action like this, revenge like this or not. I would venture to say that it's not. But whether, they're depicting a heroism or a triumph of the human spirit and things like that, and something that, regardless of whether you think that somebody should take revenge by killing somebody else like that or not, and it's not like he murdered them. They were actually in a duel. It was one of the, in fact, Inigo Montoya.
He actually gets stabbed a few times.
Yeah, he actually had the exact same kind of wounds the other guy did, so it was kind of a kill or be killed sort of thing. But the idea is everybody, regardless of your opinion, whether he should take vengeance that way or not, can identify in a good way with the triumph of the human spirit that was achieved there. To put a nude person on a TV screen, that is not the kind of motive that you're trying, that's not the kind of emotion or that's not the kind of place you're trying to bring somebody to when you do that. And if you are, there is most certainly a way to do that without the nudity.
Absolutely. And actually, real quick before you read Ephesians, just because we're touching on it real quick.
Yeah.
Very fast tangent. So in that scene where they're fighting and he's like, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And he, and they're going through it. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about language. Now,
yeah,
this was not. I do not believe that this was glorifying to God, but I will say, when he says,
"I want my father back,"
you
person who I don't like,
you son of a gun.
Yeah.
First of all, that is an awesome line. I hate to admit it. Anybody that's listening is probably like, "Oh, you're an idiot." No, I think that's an awesome. To me. If he would have said, "I want my father back, you meanie head," it's not the same thing. I mean, he's like, "I want my father back, you," but it's powerful. Just that
part of it. I mean, the way he delivered that line, he probably could have delivered almost any line.
Maybe
he just nailed it.
But it's just to me, there was a power in that exact phrase where if I think he would have said, "I want my father back, you poop head." I mean, it doesn't. Doesn't. I mean, even if he gave it the exact same passion that he put into that line, I just don't think it would have worked. So, in that instance, is that a weird thing?
The only argument I'm making is that it probably wasn't the only thing that could have delivered that kind of line. I'm not going to mean
I'm just throwing this out there. It's just a blah blah blah. But anyway, let's get into Ephesians.
Oh, well, the Ephesians. Now we had just read, "Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving." Again, we're talking about what's the difference between a sex scene and a scene of violence in a movie. Here we go. This comes from verse 5 of Ephesians 5. "For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God." So the Lord has just upped the ante for us that, okay, if you think it's okay, because it's okay to watch violence, it's okay to watch sex. Well, this probably falls under sexually impure. And I'm not saying that any of us are sexually pure. Again, like we said in the last or it was 2 podcasts ago, that our only move in regards to this is repentance. is to be on our face before God and trust in the work of Jesus Christ on the cross, who is in a very real sense taken care of this kind of thing for us. So we can stand before God, not as those who are sexually impure, but as those who are regarded as sexually pure, because Christ was. But nonetheless, if this is the sort of thing that you're trying to give into, or you are okay with giving into, there's this powerful language here: inheritance in the kingdom of Christ. It's like saying to God, well, I want everything that your kingdom brings. I want the eternal life. I want the holy city, and I want everything else he offers. But you know what? I want the sex in my movie, guy. I don't want to get rid of that in order to have the kingdom of Christ. And so, and I put a blog out a number of weeks ago that I think I said I brought it down to the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And I asked one simple question at the end. This really comes down to the matter of, do you want to see God or do you not want to see God?
Yeah, and I think, it's almost like we do it on purpose sometimes, where you think, I want the kingdom of God. I want to be in heaven. I want to be, told, thank you, good and faithful servant, welcome to heaven. It's going to be awesome, and instead what we do is we just justify it by going, well, a sin is a sin. I'll just watch this one thing and it'll be fine. Tomorrow I won't, and the next day I won't. But, today it's not that big.
Oh, I know we all do that. I think, it's like what we talked about on the last two podcasts is how it's our human nature that tries to grasp for piousness, and we try to reach for our own righteousness by saying, well, under my own power, under my own authority, I can become purer in these ways by not looking at movies that have this. That has now made me a righteous person. That's not the correct motivation. Jesus tells us to be holy and pure because that's how he is. We're supposed to follow him, not out of a desire to be praised by the Lord for a righteousness of our own, but to love the fact that he's provided the righteousness for us. And out of love for him, out of gratitude for him, and again, like this Ephesians 5 says, but instead let there be thanksgiving. If you are truly thankful to Christ for what he's done for you in redeeming you from your sins and making you perfect, though you're not perfect in the eyes of the Father, God, if you're truly thankful for that, why would you crucify him on the cross all over again by trying to keep these little sins under your, or trying to establish your rightful place in the inheritance of the kingdom of Christ on your own terms?
I think people forget. If Jesus hadn't died on the cross, it would have only taken one sin.
That's true.
One sin, and you were done. You're going to go to hell, which means that everyone was going to go to hell, because it's one of those things where, and it doesn't matter how big the sin was. It doesn't matter if it was a big sin or a little sin, that it just didn't matter. Anything, whether you called somebody a butthole, or you watched porn, or whether you,
it all comes from the same place.
It all comes from the same place.
We've taken our eyes off of God, and God says it many, many places. In fact, I think it was in, oh boy, I'm going to say this wrong. Was it in Psalm 50? Let me check really quick, because he said something, his main judgment against us, and I think we've said it on the podcast before. Yeah, it is Psalm 50. We tend to think that God's judgment against our sin isn't as big. He's making too big a deal of it. Listen to this. It says, Psalm 50:22. Mark this then, you who forget God, lest I tear you apart and there be none to deliver. Okay, as far as God's concerned, the thing that is going to tear us apart is the mere fact that we forget God. When you look at porn, you're forgetting God. When you use filthy language, you're forgetting God. Because I can't imagine why you would use some of the words that we regard as filthy words while remembering God's like, man, out of love for God and out of thankfulness to God, I couldn't help but use that word. Out of thankfulness, it's ridiculous. Out of thankfulness to God, I couldn't help but go on the web and check out all these ladies who are not dressed And
I don't know if this makes a difference or not, and I don't know if it's maybe just hindsight or just buyer's remorse or something like that, where for me, for instance, whenever I do something where let's say I stub my toe and I go, ow, bad word. I instantly go, Lord, I'm so sorry. That was stupid. I cannot believe I said that. And it's one of those things where, I don't know if it's, again, I don't know if it's, for me, it's an automatic reaction where I am very aware that I just said something or did something that I know was wrong or stupid. And so instantly my first impulse is to just go, Lord, I'm sorry. Like, you knew I was going to do that anyway, but God, I cannot believe I did that. I'm sorry. There's no reason for me to do that. And it's like that with anything. Like, if you get mad at your wife or your kids, or if you just do anything where even if it's not a sin, you just feel guilty about it. I mean,
well, that might be, even among Christians, that might be kind of a rare thing. And I mean, for the sake of continuity, let me bring Hebrews 13 in one more time. Earlier I did when I said, through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice praise to God that is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. We also read in Hebrews 13, and this should be true of every Christian. I think this is kind of a good litmus test for whether, if you want to know whether you're a Christian or not, are you repentant before God when you recognize that what you're involved in is a sin? This would be a good litmus test of whether somebody actually, I mean, if you ever question whether you're actually a believer or not, like Shai Labuff, who's got some language that he's using that wouldn't necessarily be customary for a Christian to use. He's using it as he describes his faith. But let's say, like Ben, like you were saying, you stub your toe and you use a word and you're immediately remorseful. I think it's when we recognize, 'cause we do a lot of things that are sinful that we don't recognize as sinful. And that's why we have Psalms that tells us things like, search me, O God, and know my heart, and see if there is a wicked way in me and lead me in the way everlasting, because God is seeing sin in us that we're not seeing. Okay. So one of the tests for us, whether or not you're a Christian, is whether or not you are remorseful for the sin that you know you have. And if you are, like I said, again, we're bringing in Hebrews 13, says in verse 21, it says, and it had just led up to it by saying, may God, and here we go, equip you with everything good that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. And so, one of the marks of being a Christian, marks of being a real Christian, is that if you recognize that you have sinned in any way, whether you'd consider it a big sin or a little sin, that you would repent of it. And if you are, Ben, like you said, then you can know for sure this is the part of your sin. Sin is not pleasing to God, but if you are repentant before God for it, that is pleasing to God. And I'm going to go so far as to say that it's because he's working that which is pleasing in his sight in you. He's the one breaking your heart over it.
I would agree with that. Because it's one of those things where I do think there is a difference. I mean, I think between, here, I'll give you an example of something that I think is very, very strange. Mm-hmm. So talking with someone who's not a Christian and trying to minister to them without beating them over the head with it. And, we're talking, and it's one of those, it's a nice moment because, we're outside, we're around a campfire, it's middle of the night, and it's like, this is a good time. Mm-hmm. It's just two guys sitting by a fire, let's talk about Jesus, without, going overboard and scaring them away from the idea. And I think that I'm making some progress, and all of a sudden he stops and goes, you know what? I don't think I want to, follow somebody who says that I can't masturbate and drink beer. And that was the end of the conversation. I was like, really? I'm like, you're willing to trade in your soul and eternity in heaven because you like beer and you want to masturbate? I'm like, my jaw just dropped because I didn't even have an answer for that because I was so stunned with that answer.
Well, the thing, it's no wonder why God would have wrath against, because God is offering us to live like this inheritance it's talking about in Ephesians 5, that the inheritance of the kingdom of Christ, you could have everything that God gives Jesus Christ. That's what it says. We're joint heirs with Christ. It says in Romans 8 that we are heirs along with Christ. Of what? Of this inheritance of the kingdom. Okay, God's going to give you everything. The meek shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, and everything that comes with God. And you're going to hold out for that?
For these simple passing things that, when all's said and done, I mean, it's not like when you're, toes up, you can't bring beer with you. I mean, you're not going to be. No,
you can't. What you're basically saying is, whatever years I've got left, this is how I want to use them, and after that, that's it.
And again, and I wasn't. I mean, I've gotten into. I mean, first of all, you can listen to a million different podcasts or a million different preachers or whatever. I mean, we've all discussed as Christian. We've all discussed the drinking thing. We're not going to get into that. No. But it's just one of those things where it's something small something so small, whether it's like, you know what, I was going to follow Jesus, but you know what, I love porn so much. But I mean, basically what you're saying when you say something like that is, look, I have no desire to go up in heaven where life is, I mean, you can't even fathom
all these wonderful promises of God are cheap.
I mean, they are. I mean, look, people automatically think that if you become a Christian, you have to give up your entire life, which you do, but not in the way that they're thinking. I mean, it's not like
Jesus said, he who finds his life will lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake will find it. And I don't know what that means to all of you guys out there, but what he's really trying to tell us is that if you're trying to hang on to, you name it, it doesn't have to be something as erroneous as porn or getting hammered. It could be, you could say, well, I really want to hang on. Instead of giving my life over to Jesus Christ, I want to keep my job as a neonatal surgeon and rescue little tiny babies. That's more important to me than Jesus Christ. And half of the world is going to say, well, good for you, man, because you're actually making a difference. One of the hard realities that I've had to deal with in my life is that the idolatries that are the most dangerous are the ones that are most easily justifiable. We could do a whole podcast on that.
That's true.
Tons and tons of things are coming to mind.
It's funny because I guess I've never even looked at it from that. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I guess I've never looked at it that way because your instant thought is the reason why somebody wouldn't want to follow Christ is because of something that
some erroneous sin.
Something that's wrong. But I suppose you're exactly right. I mean, if it's just something like anything. I mean,
it just has to be less than God. And that's what God is saying, mark this lest you forget God and I tear you apart and there be none left. There be nothing left of you to save. Because anything less than God, so first things first, we've got to get a real grip on the reality that God is. For one, we can't do that. I'm not trying to say that we can understand God and his infiniteness or eternality or anything like that. I'm just saying that of all the things in this world that is revealed to us as good things, I'm not trying to say that there aren't good things. I'm just saying of all the things that we perceive as good, to grip onto God as the good and the best, because anything short of God, and that's what Romans is trying to tell us, that everyone falls short of the glory of God, as in we reach and grab onto something that's less than God. Neural surgery, as good as it is, if that's what you put in front of God, it's still less than God.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think I actually posted that on Twitter not too long ago.
Did you?
I believe so. I mean, we all, not just some of us, not just Bill down the street or Shai Labuff or whatever. We all fall short of the glory of God.
Well, and that's what it means is when how do we fall short? It's when we have put something that's short of his glory as our chief treasure.
Oh, and in fact, I did. I posted that on Twitter 4 hours ago. That's why I came.
Well, for those of you who are listening, that's going to be days and days and days and days and days ago.
But it's one of those things where, that is exactly it. I mean, we've all sinned. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. But that's kind of the whole reason Jesus died. Jesus bridged that gap between, us, sin, and God.
Yep.
I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, now we have direct contact with God. We're going to have really direct contact with God someday up in heaven. So it's just, I can't.
Well, we get to inherit this kingdom. I'm going back to Ephesians 5 again. Inheritance in the kingdom of Christ. That's what Jesus Christ came to do for us, is to unite with him in faith. By faith in him, we get that inheritance. That is what needs to be our chief goal in all this. And so to avoid, I hope, Kyle, I hope we answered your question. I really do. We're going to make a second podcast out of this topic.
This is going to be part one.
We wrote down.
Yeah, we didn't even get to Real with Rob, and we will get Real with Rob.
Let's start the next one with Real with Rob. And of course, we got that Christopher Walken.
Well, you know what? I don't want to.
Something,
you know what? I think I want to make sure that let's go ahead and make sure Christopher Walken makes it onto this podcast.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But then we'll still make a continuation of part 2 because I don't want. You know what? If Christopher Walken wants to come on the podcast and say something,
why would we tell him no?
I don't know. So you know what? Maybe we should. Let's do Big Thoughts with Christopher Walken.
Listen up and quit your talking. It's time for Big Thoughts with Christopher Walken.
I've thought about it a lot, and still don't know. What does the fox say?
You know what? I never get tired of listening to that guy.
That's pretty cool.
We got to go. So, you guys, thank you so much for listening. And this is going to be part 1, and we will continue part 2 next week. So, I'm Ben Knight.
I'm Rob Royce.
Oh,